Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. We rest in our home on the day that you chose. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. You get rest to our soul on Shabbat, we shalom. Yeah, it's a habit, gotta have it every 7 day to Sabbath day. Blessed by the best, so I do whatever Abba say. Chala at your boy, breaking bread, sipping Cabernet. It's a holy day, so I'm resting every Saturday. On a Friday night, I'm studying the Torah. I see the light and it's brighter than the aurora. Lighting up the candles at the top of the menorah. Fire up a roast, no Sodom and Gomorrah. It's a feast day, yeah. Right at the ending of the weekdays, every week it replays. Like the Father in heaven, the greatest DJ, I'm jamming to what he plays. In my PJs with the fam, and I've been way too blessed to be stressed. But it's best to refresh, decompress in the nest. Every Sunday, come and take a breath, recollect on the 7th day of rest. Cause the Sabbath is a day to be remembered, blessed. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. We rest in our home on the day that you chose. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. You give rest to our soul on Shabbat, we shalom. 7 is the number of completion. That's why Shabbat's the end of the weekend. We relent from the work we completed. Then we wake up Sunday morning feeling refreshed. In our mind, in our spirit, in our soul, yeah. Grab the kids, gather around in a home, yeah. Turn the music up loud, let it flow. Grab the shuffle, raise it up, let it blow. Praise to Yahuwah, it's a holy day. And the world think we crazy, but it's okay. We know keeping his commandments is the only way. If you wanna walk with y'all, then you gotta obey. Trusting in the Father, cause he knows best. Walking in his way, got us so blessed. The ancient of days made a way, so we praise him. Thank him for the Shabbat Shalom, amazing, yeah. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. We rest in our home on the day that you chose. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. You give rest to our soul on Shabbat, we shalom. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. We rest in our home on the day that you chose. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. You give rest to our soul on Shabbat, we shalom.
Hello and welcome to Kingdom of Context. I'm Sean. I want to thank you for joining us for our Sabbath live stream. Shabbat Shalom, sweetie.
Shabbat Shalom, babe.
And everyone here that's observing the Sabbath, Shabbat Shalom. Hope you're having a good, happy Sabbath, a restful and peaceful Sabbath. And if you're a follower of Christ Jesus, but you haven't already realized that the Sabbath is for your instruction, benefit, and edification, it's part of our discipleship. Look into it. It's one of the easiest ways that we can disciple after Christ and do the behavior of the Father and the Son. So thank you guys for everyone being here in the live chat. And we're going to pick up Daniel chapter 5 through 7 today. We've been going through the book of Daniel. Just as an announcement for everybody, we wanted to say after we finish Daniel, we're going to be picking up Bel and the Dragon and Susanna, which are kind of like in the same. Many historians claim that Bel and the Dragon used to be in chapter 3 of Daniel.
Okay.
So it's actually part of Daniel's text that was removed from the book of Daniel over time. Which is, why would they do that? I don't know. But we're going to read that. And they're also going to read Susanna, which has Daniel as one of the key characters in it, and how he creates justice to a woman that's being oppressed. So it's kind of an interesting story with the story of Susanna. Okay. Is there anything you want to announce before we get going?
In about 20 minutes, I have to pause to go put some bread in the oven. And then about 40 minutes after that, I'll have to pause to go get it out of the oven. So just be prepared for that. Otherwise, no, I have nothing to announce. No news.
Okay. Let's jump into it. So this is Daniel chapter 5. It says, later King Belshazzar held a great feast for 1,000 of his nobles, and he drank wine with them. Under the influence of the wine, Belshazzar gave orders to bring in the gold and silver vessels that Nebuchadnezzar his father had taken from the temple in Jerusalem, so that the king could drink from them, along with his nobles, his wives, and his concubines. Thus they brought in the gold vessels that had been taken from the temple, the house of God in Jerusalem, and the king drank from them, along with his nobles, his wives, and his concubines. And as they drank the wine, they praised their gods of gold and silver, bronze and iron, wood and stone. At that moment, the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the wall near the lampstand in the royal palace. As the king watched the hand that was writing, his face grew pale. His thoughts so alarmed him that his hips gave way and his knees knocked together. The king called out for the enchanters, astrologers, and diviners to be brought in, and he said to these wise men of Babylon, "Whoever reads this inscription and tells me its interpretation will be clothed in purple and have a gold chain placed around his neck, and he will be made the third highest ruler in the kingdom." So all the king's wise men came in, but they could not read the inscription or interpret it for him. Then King Belshazzar became even more terrified. His face grew pale even more, and his nobles were bewildered. Hearing the outcry of the kings and his nobles, the queen entered the banquet hall. "O king, may you live forever," she said. "Do not let your thoughts terrify you or your face grow pale. There is a man in your kingdom who has the spirit of the holy gods in him. In the days of your father, he is found to have insight, intelligence, and wisdom like that of the gods. Your father, King Nebuchadnezzar, appointed him chief of the magicians, enchanters, astrologers, and diviners. Your father, the king, did this because Daniel, the one who named Belshazzar, was found to have an extraordinary spirit, as well as knowledge, understanding, and the ability to interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve difficult problems. Summon Daniel, therefore, and he will give you the interpretation." So Daniel was brought before the king, who asked him, "Are you Daniel, one of the exiles my father, the king, brought from Judah? I have heard that the spirit of the gods is in you, and that you have insight, intelligence, and extraordinary wisdom. Now the wise men and enchanters were brought before me to read this inscription and interpret it for me, but they could not give its interpretation. But I have heard about you, that you are able to give interpretation and solve difficult problems. Therefore, if you can read this inscription and give me its interpretation, you will be clothed in purple and have a gold chain placed around your neck. You will be made a third highest ruler in the kingdom." In response, Daniel said to the king, "You may keep your gifts for yourself and give your rewards to someone else. Nevertheless, I will read the inscription for the king and interpret it for him. As for you, O king, the Most High God gave your father Nebuchadnezzar sovereignty and greatness, glory and honor. Because of the greatness that he bestowed on him, the people of every nation and language trembled in fear before him. He killed whom he wished and kept alive whom he wished. He exalted whom he wished and humbled whom he wished. But when his heart became arrogant and his spirit was hardened with pride, he was deposed from his royal throne, and his glory was taken from him. He was driven away from mankind, and his madness was like that of a beast. His mind was like that of a beast. He lived with the wild donkeys and ate grass like an ox, and his body was drenched with the dew of heaven, until he acknowledged that the Most High God rules over the kingdom of mankind, setting over it whom he wishes. But you, his son, O Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, even though you knew all this. Instead, you exalted yourself against the Lord of heaven. The vessels from his house were brought to you, and as you drank wine from them with your nobles, wives, and concubines, you praised your gods of silver and gold, bronze and iron, wood and stone, which cannot see or hear or understand. But you have failed to glorify the God who holds in his hand your very breath and all your ways. Therefore he sent the hand that wrote the inscription. Now this is the inscription that was written, Mene Mene Tekel Parson. And this is the interpretation of the message. Mene means that God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. Tekel means that you have been weighed on the scales and found deficient. Perez means that your kingdom has been divided and given over to the Medes and Persians. Then Belshazzar gave the command, and they clothed Daniel in purple, placed a gold chain around his neck, and proclaimed him the third highest ruler in the kingdom. That very night, Belshazzar, king of the Chaldeans, was slain, and Darius the Mede received the kingdom at age 62.
That was quick fulfillment there.
Yeah.
Didn't you tell me that there's
a historical background,
an actual historical background to this?
Yeah. Well, it's yes, there's a supplementary secular historical background to this. Yeah. This is the moment where the Medes, the Persians, King Darius, they conquered Babylon without a war. So they basically dammed up the river. So the way that Babylon was built was like, it was built with walls that it went over the river in certain spots where the river kind of like wound through the city in a horseshoe shape. And so they would have places that the river went to the exterior of the city. Because remember, this was like a massive, massive city, miles and miles wide, right?
Yeah.
So like then the walls were supposedly like 60 feet thick.
So it was a walled city.
It was a walled
Okay.
city with gates.
Mhm.
But they had the waterways of the rivers that flowed in through the city through these metal gates. And the metal gates only extended down into like part of the water, right? But the Medes basically dammed up the river so that
They could
the
go
water was so
underneath it.
low and they could get under the gates. And then they walked in and happened upon them in their royal chambers and took over the king with like a small group of fighting men and took over the entire kingdom of Babylon.
And
with-
so that infiltration was happening on
As
this night as Daniel's having this conversation.
yeah, like a couple hours after
with
this,
Belshazzar. Wow.
if not already in the works as this was going on.
That's wild. And that's
Yeah.
recorded secular history.
Not this part.
Not this part,
This is
but-
biblical history. I believe this is accurate history as well.
Yes.
But there's the correlating supplementary activities recorded in secular history about how Babylon was taken over without a war.
That's awesome.
And it's for any of the guys out there, this was like the first Rainbow Six mission, right? So like this, you had your elite forces coming in. They figured out a clever way to get in the city and take over the king without having to actually rampage or siege the city with ramparts or just go into open battle against their forces in a field somewhere. So
Well, that was probably a
very smart
Yeah.
tactic.
welcomed peaceful regime change.
Yeah.
Well, peaceful for everyone.
Well,
except
not entirely.
Belshazzar.
I mean, Darius, I mean, the Persians weren't exactly the most righteous kingdom, but
I'm just joking.
what's interesting though is it actually gives me like the vibes of Star Wars, The New Hope, where he destroys the Death Star with this very small design flaw
Yeah.
with this channel where the bullet could go into this little ventilation shaft. And so I've always wondered, like, if I know there's a lot of conspiracy on whether George Lucas truly wrote Star Wars or not, but regardless of that, the New Hope, the ending where they destroy the Death Star with this very particular design flaw, it's like the same concept in ancient Babylon.
They like found the one weakness in the system.
Yes. Yes. All right. Looks like we got. Hey, Jeff and Joe, thank you so much. I appreciate your membership. Thank you guys. Appreciate your memberships. Party Truck, appreciate your membership. Thank you, brother. What's going on here? And thank you so much. Jack is saying, thank you for the super chat, brother. Saying, do you no longer check your email? I do. I need to check. I guess I'm guessing you're implying you sent me an email recently. So let me go check that. I just get a lot more emails than I can catch up on.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I'm way behind on a lot of emails. Okay. So yeah, this is an interesting chapter. And it's like this, the son of Nebuchadnezzar takes over and his name's Belshazzar. So apparently he didn't take his father's name. That's historically, that's why there's only one. There's only two Nebuchadnezzars, Nebuchadnezzar 1 and Nebuchadnezzar 2. And then here's his son not calling himself Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah.
Right. So that matches with history. Right. And then, of course, after the days of Nebuchadnezzar, Darius takes over. That's also in recorded history, the kings of Babylon.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of supplemental secular history that matches the book of Daniel.
To all this,
This is actually one of the, apologetics. The biblical scholars and apologists will use the book of Daniel in correlation with documented history to say this particular book is one that venerates itself as a historical narrative from the ancient Israelites that is very much in correlation with even secular historians. And so it's a very strong apologetic for the accurate truth and historicity of the scriptures. So something to keep in mind. But there's a lot going on here with them. It's just this weirdness of like, oh man, like it's as if they didn't have their own drinking vessels.
Yeah, no, this is clearly to be a form of mockery of the God of Israel, because they're not just doing it in the banquet hall, they're doing it in the presence of their idols, and they're doing it to their idols. So this is more than just, we ran out of Dixie cups. This is, oh, hey, go and get these things so we can make a mockery of these people's God.
Yeah, they had, I guarantee you, as the leaders of Babylon, they had their own gold and silver drinking vessels.
Yeah.
And it gives off the same vibe that we see the Romans do whenever they took over somebody, and they would desecrate the altars of the gods they took over by sacrificing to Jupiter the lamb, the ox, and the pig on those altars every time. And that was how they kind of staked their flag, so to speak, in the temple that they just took over to whatever nation they took over. So it's a very interesting, weird mockery, right? That's just, you know, you just to me, it's like you just got to be influenced by unclean spirits for something like this.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah.
But here's the interesting part I want to point out. If we correlate the book of Jeremiah, the book of Second Maccabees, as far as in the book of Baruch itself, Second Baruch specifically, if you correlate the information given there as far as the destruction of the temple by Nebuchadnezzar after he fully comes in, it's a situation where the Second Baruch talks about how the angel says that they're going to take the Ark of the Covenant and go take it to the cave to the mountain where Moses was buried, not to be unearthed again until the second coming, till the day of the Lord, right?
That's going to be
So
such a
the Ark of the Covenant
day.
and some other temple furniture was taken with the Ark to that cave, never to be unearthed again until the second coming. But these other vessels were taken by Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah.
So this is where when Nebuchadnezzar gets there's already a hole in the wall, and the angel is explaining to Baruch in Second Baruch that they did this on purpose so that Nebuchadnezzar could not say he overcame this house of Yahweh.
Yeah.
So when he gets there, there's already, everyone's gone. There's already a big hole in the wall that the angels themselves made, so that he just walks right in. And he's like, well, I didn't really take this place over. Looks like it's already, and they're missing furniture out of their.
It's been given to him.
It's like, he took the leftovers. The angels already took the important stuff.
Yeah.
And left and opened the door and showed him, like, look, you're not overcoming anything. We've already cleared this place out.
Yeah.
According to what's important. But he took these, even with these small remaining articles, Yahweh's offended.
Yes. Because it wasn't an innocent,
right.
Someone just stumbled upon them and happened to need a cup. Like, it was a very deliberate mocking. And, you know, it is very interesting to watch these different generations of people. You know, this guy, his father, you know, sounds like was serving Yahweh by the end of his life. So it's just amazing to see how little change that brought to Babylon as a whole. And sadly, because his wife and him are still referring to Daniel as having the spirits of the spirit of the gods and the knowledge of the gods, you know? So like, even with this, it's showing, it still hasn't dawned on them that no, it's not the spirit of the gods. It's the spirit of the God, the most high God.
Well, I would say the indicator of why that can happen is they're still polytheists.
Absolutely. Totally. Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. Like, for me, it's sad because you have, in one instance, you have a king in Nineveh who at the time of Jonah, that king commanded everyone in the kingdom to repent. Even the animals he had clothed with sackcloth and ashes as part of this mass national repentance. So it's so sad to see. It's such an uplifting story to see Nebuchadnezzar end with letting go of his pride and admitting and submitting to the Lord, but not seeing clearly there was not a cultural change. There was not an edict that went out through all of Babylon. You know, it was not a mass repentance type of situation, you know. And I'm not saying it, we're great to have just one, right? We're happy Nebuchadnezzar repented, but it's interesting to look at the differences between one king who encouraged his whole entire country to do this versus one who it was more of a personal thing between him and God.
So even sadly, you see the same pattern even within the kings of Judah. Hezekiah was a righteous king, lauded, venerated, given special length of days by God to live an extra 15 years, considered an extremely righteous king in the history of Israel's kings. Yeah. But then Manasseh was his son.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so like unfortunately, you see this pattern. It doesn't guarantee that your sons will do what you want. It's still their choice. This is why Yahweh in Ezekiel 18 has to remind the people, like, each man is judged by his own actions.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It definitely is. it's scary to hear as a new parent, you know. There's this part of yourself that you think you know, you can't control everything, and you think you understand that your child is still going to grow up and make their own decisions and all of that. But there's also this party that is like hoping and praying that if you do all the right things, quote unquote, you can prevent that for them. So it's like, it's just another aspect of the levels of faith that you have, the levels of faith and trust in the Lord that
Yes.
you have to, you know, for me, that I have to let go of that fear that I had of having a child to begin with, because these are fears I never even thought of before. I had all kinds of other fears in mind before I had them. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, there's all this other stuff we have to worry about.
Yeah, I think it's one of those issues where the king is in a kingdom. I think it's even more difficult. Like if you're the king of a kingdom,
Mhm.
it's even more difficult to give that type of dedication and attention to your children, because you've got, like, they're in the palace with you. All the servants are there, all the dignitaries coming and going,
Yeah.
all the duties of the temple, all the duties of the kingdom. And it's like, does he just take that time and say, I'm going to cut away all the duties of the kingdom, and I'm just going to be sitting here saying, I'm going to spend 2 hours a day with my daughter or my son,
Yeah.
making sure they know the ways of Yahweh. And
Yeah.
I imagine the temptation, not temptation, but just the strain of time management is that much more difficult for a king in a kingdom.
Yeah.
Look, I feel overworked. I was talking about needing an assistant, right? I feel overworked as far as the things that I don't have the opportunity to respond to every single email, the opportunity to respond to every single person. I don't have the opportunity to do the pace that I would like to accomplish with the things I want to do, to provide tools and resources. Right? It's a slower pace than I would like.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm just one person. Now imagine being a king and having an entire country looking to you.
Yeah.
Right? Yes, they have a cabinet, they have administrators, advisors, that kind of thing. So, like we've read in the beginning of Daniel, they have governors, prefects, satraps, all that kind of stuff. But still, like, unless they're dedicated to take time away to spend time with their children and making sure, because think about all those other people in the kingdom, within the palace, if you will, that possibly are not following Yahweh.
Yeah.
And all their influences on a child that's growing up,
Yeah.
and what they see and hear, and you know what I mean? So it's a really sad type of thing,
Yeah.
in my opinion. All right. So it looks like we got, Jack is doing another super chat. Appreciate you, brother. Jack is saying, didn't want to reach here. It's the only way. I felt like I was ghosted after working on an unpublished website months ago. Jack.
I'm going to go put my bread in.
Okay. Jack. Yeah. I'm going to email you, and I guess I missed one of your emails. We're going to talk about this. As far as the website, I do appreciate you asking to create a supplementary website for us. I just have to talk to you about what you did send me, if I have the right link, I guess, and what changes need to be made, or what updates would need to be made, that kind of thing. So I apologize. I got behind on some of my emails, but you can always also, I believe you're on Patreon. You're welcome to email me on Patreon as well, or message me on Patreon as well. Because my emails fill up faster than my Patreon inbox as well. So that's another option as well. But and we can talk about what changes need to be done before it can be published, and also just my questions in general that I have about the website. So, but I appreciate the super chat, brother. Yeah, I don't know, so-and-so. I don't know what kind of sackcloth. I don't know if there's different types of sackcloth. I apologize. I'm not truly unfamiliar. I'm truly unfamiliar with, like, sackcloth in general, and if there's different types or not. Well, that was quick.
Yeah, I just had to put it in the oven. I'll get it out in about 45 minutes.
Okay. So this is that their handwriting on the wall, I'm guessing, was an angel.
Yeah.
So they saw an angel just with his hand come into their visual spectrum of view.
Yeah.
That would definitely freak people out.
Yes.
You know. And this starts writing this particular thing on the wall that needs to be interpreted, which it seems like what was interpreted was just a different language.
Yeah, like maybe Daniel had the gift of tongues here.
Or he just was wise enough to have been taught different languages, because
That's true. They did talk about him.
you know, he was
Getting all
trained in
that
all the
education
wisdom and
of-
intelligence
yeah.
of Babylon.
And you would need to be multilingual, I would think.
But I don't understand this,
you're
because this was this
high-ranking.
is the son of Nebuchadnezzar. So maybe he just didn't get the same training that Daniel did.
Well, this is assuming this is Babylonian language. Clearly, it was
No, it's
something that he
not.
couldn't read.
That's what I'm saying. He translated from a different language. It's not Babylonian.
Yeah.
But I just think that's interesting to me that the son, growing up in Babylonian kingdom, son of the king, he doesn't apparently know what language this is. But it's just the way that God used this to bring Daniel into the situation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because really, I don't know. I'm guessing Daniel's applying with these are just one words,
Right.
right? And Daniel's like, well, this means an entire thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm guessing part of the interpretation that Daniel is giving is, okay, this is clearly judgment against you. Daniel knows it because of the Spirit of God within him. So it's more than just Daniel knowing a different language that the king didn't know.
Yeah.
It's also he's providing the interpretation by God for judgment. So he's casting, like, Daniel is now standing in the place of a prophet to be like, God's judging you.
Yeah.
You know, you found wanted.
It's interesting to me that again we have a situation where there's a king that comes up that doesn't know anything about, this Hebrew that previously with other kings is like known throughout the nation. I mean, it's like the Pharaoh that rose up in Egypt that didn't know Joseph, and so all the favor that was poured upon the Hebrews because people knew Joseph, like there was a time where that reputation is not passed on to the next king. And it looks like, and this is even a different situation because that king was a foreign king from Canaan, so, okay, fine. He doesn't know who Joseph was, but for this guy to be the actual son of the last king that praised Daniel and already gave Daniel a high ranking position in his government and all this stuff, to not know who he is or that he interprets, he's got this amazing gift of interpretation. And even the wife knows, the queen knows who Daniel is and the gift that he has. So it's just interesting.
It's like this son has just been a kind of
just
aloof. He's been
like,
kind of aloof in the kingdom,
Which son of Saul is it? That's like that. That's just kind of hanging around eating his grapes.
Well, definitely not Jonathan, but I don't remember all the names of his sons.
It's like reminds me of that kind of prince.
Was it the one who went after his daughter, or no? That was David's son who went after the sister.
Yeah, no, it was one of Jonathan's brothers.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name. He's got two different names in scripture, but anyways, it's that kind of, maybe he was that kind of prince where he just wasn't taking seriously that he would eventually be ruler over like the largest nation at the time.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, because clearly the son is not, been given, because he would be a prince and then he becomes king. So just makes you wonder. We don't really get to see the transition of how Nebuchadnezzar lost power. Did he die?
Yeah.
Did he get killed? Did
Yeah.
he, did killed in battle? Like, it doesn't really tell you that stuff. Again, we're saying this so you can try to get your mind thinking about background context to what's going on here. Like, where did this King Nebuchadnezzar II, the most venerated king in ancient Babylon's history, here it is being mentioned in the Bible, and we don't get his death.
Yeah.
We don't get his decline. We get these incredible moments in his life and his interactions with Daniel, but then his sons took over in the next chapter, and you don't really get any kind of transition of any kind.
Yeah. Also, before you and I read this again together, it was lost on me actually what a time span that the book of Daniel is recording. Like, it's actually a quite short book that it actually covers quite a large span of time. I kind of didn't realize that.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting
wow,
at.
these are whole huge chunks of time. Like, how many years was Daniel there?
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at, because he was there his whole life. I don't think he went back.
Yeah.
And we don't know if he died within 70 years, because that means if he was a young man, let's say he's 20, right? That means he was in Babylon for 70 years. He's 90.
Yeah.
So we don't know the date of Daniel's death either. And so there's just little stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's clearly been a huge amount of time that's passed, or it feels like you said, it's like none of these people knew about Daniel except for this woman.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like what's going on with that?
Right.
Who did she know? Did her parents tell her about, like, what's going on
Yeah.
here? It's just very interesting to me, because you would imagine that Belshazzar's wife would be his age or younger in this culture.
Yeah.
So it's not like she's an old timer herself, but yet they've remembered about this. Oh, remember, there's still another diviner. There's still another wise man in the kingdom named Daniel that's not here. Let's go ask him. He was great at this. And so it's interesting because they call him, like, he's on call.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
This is a banquet. This is in the evening or nighttime. The invasion that happens a couple hours later happened at night.
Yeah.
Historically.
Yeah.
And this is where, like, David's just, someone knocked on his door. You're coming with us.
Yeah.
You're
Daniel.
your skills are needed now.
Yeah.
You're coming with us. So, like, he's on call, immediately has to show up and go. And I think it's interesting that, he's still alive. Is he old at this point? We don't know. Is he middle-aged? We just don't know. Does he have a wife and children? It never tells us. We don't know. So I think in Susanna it mentions him having a wife, but which would make sense. If you're this powerful and protected in the kingdom, more than likely you have time to take a wife and do what Jeremiah suggested, which is have children, plant a vineyard, buy a house, settle down, pray for the welfare of Babylon. You know what I'm saying? So there's a whole aspect of Daniel's life that we don't get in this book. We're just getting these unique highlights to his influence over these foreign kings.
Yeah. Now, something you and I talked about when we studied this book a few months ago that I hadn't realized until we were studying, and it randomly came up in my feed at some point. There's some theories out there that he could have also been a eunuch. Like, he could have been made into a eunuch when he went into Babylon, because he was put his head over the eunuchs.
Yeah, and then there's the controversy about what is a eunuch, and there's apparently different eunuchs that weren't castrated.
And typically
they were just dedicated to be
typically with empires like Babylon who absorbed the nobility. Remember, at the beginning of the book, it talked about them taking the nobility of the Hebrews. Like, it was a common practice for them to castrate them and make them into eunuchs as part of basically making sure they can't.
I understand that.
So it's just an interesting theory. I mean, we don't have a lineage for Daniel listed for us anywhere of anyone that he begat. So it's just an interesting thought, something I never considered, that, oh wow, he could have been forced into being a eunuch, under the rule of the Babylonian king that he was under. So
very well could have. Yes. Yeah. So it's just, there's a lot here as far as this unique night. There's a lot going on with it. This is the night that there's a change of hands of the empire.
Yeah.
Right. This isn't just a one-off little event. And then there's like, oh, God gave this guy another year to repent, or another 5 years. This wasn't a supernatural event in a series of supernatural events to try to get them to repent. Like, this was a situation, not even like Jonah, where Jonah was like, oh, in 40 days, judgment's coming unless you repent. This was like, there is no more time. You found deficient.
Yeah. He's weighed you and found you wanting.
Like, it's over for you right now. Yeah. Right now. And then he dies a few hours later through a secret invasion of in the cover of darkness.
Yeah, give Daniel just enough time to get out of there, and God's sending in the next ones.
So this would make an incredible movie, by the way.
Yes, absolutely.
Because as this is going on, like, I could easily paint the picture for this movie. It starts off with Daniel praying. Right, you get the introduction to Daniel, and he's going to go to bed, while it cuts to these people getting the food ready and the partying, and the libations are flowing, and then meanwhile it cuts to the other people that are sneaking through the tall grass outside the city, coming up to the river. You know what I mean? And they're putting sand in the river to block up the river, or whatever they're doing. However, they dammed up the river quickly.
Yeah.
They're doing that real quick, and you don't know what they're doing yet until later, and it starts to unfold. So yeah, there'd be a lot here.
So many of just single chapters from this book could make full feature films.
Yeah.
That's how that's how Hollywood is ultimately based on a Babylonian death cult, because they could have endless content with biblical stories, and they just don't. They choose not. They've got ready-made storylines for themselves with all the kinds of endings people want to see, with good guy winning, and they just nope, they don't touch them.
Yeah, like even the people that are the servants that are told, hey, go get the gold and silver vessels from my father's collection when he invaded Judah and he went into the temple of Yahweh and stole these out. Like, go get those for us. And then the servants like going into the you could have a whole palace scene where like they're going into some kind of storeroom in the palace and it's all Babylonian, everything on the walls everywhere. And they're like rummaging through and they're like, oh, wait, this was from Egypt and this was from Edom. And this is from his conquest of Tyre. And then, oh, here's the ones from Judah right over here. And then they go pick those up. And then, like you'd have it. Anyway, there's so many fun things you could do to make this such an engaging little moment from a filmmaking perspective. But just what we got right here, like Daniel doesn't seem to like this guy because he tells him, he's like, by the way, you can keep your reward.
Yes. Yeah. And he doesn't do a prophecy compliment sandwich here.
Yeah.
Like he does with the previous kings. Like he definitely is just straight to the point with this one.
Yeah. And before he even gives the interpretation and divine judgment message, he reminds him that his father repented.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's like, by the way, your father did all these good things and you have not.
Yeah.
But you, his son, O Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, even though you knew all this.
Yeah.
So this is one of those things where, is this where Belshazzar basically intentionally dismissed Daniel into the lower rung of importance among the wise men?
It sounds like he has had a demotion at this point because now it's being talked about him being third. And it seemed like he was like second in command under Nebuchadnezzar. So,
well, not just that, he's not even brought in the first round of wise men.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Like he's been completely forgotten by Belshazzar.
Yeah.
And so then here comes Daniel saying, not only, but you've forgotten everything your father went through.
Yeah.
So it seems to be there's a long period of time in my mind. Either that or this Belshazzar took over through subterfuge, unceremoniously took over, like so often happened in the ancient days, in the ancient kingdoms, or just the fact that he was just the son, like, who was the dumbest of them all, and he ended up getting the throne because who knows, maybe he was the last one alive after battles or whatever, or sicknesses. And once Nebuchadnezzar died, this guy took over, but he doesn't seem to be very bright. And it seems to be that he's,
kind of a worthless.
He's just not. Yeah. Well, clearly in the eyes of the father, he's worthless, but like, just, it's just a weird thing. Like you're throwing a banquet party, you're getting drunk and you want to go grab vessels to a foreign god to bring them in front of your gods, to use them in front of like, you would think that they would have vessels dedicated to their own gods.
Yeah.
It seems kind of taboo to begin with that you would want to grab a foreign vessel dedicated to another god and come use it in honor of your god. Like, I guess, did he not fear his own gods being disrespected by? It's weird to me. It's just weird.
His gods have the same standards.
Yeah, we get it. His gods aren't real. They're mute anyway. They're not real. It's not. I'm just saying, like, in his own weird theology.
No, but I'm saying even the unclean spirits that are being worshipped behind those idols, like there is a spiritual thing going on there. Like but those ones, I think they have different. I think they have a different idea of disrespect because they like the idea of mocking the God of our, our God. Yeah.
Surely.
So yeah, I don't think he would.
And the last thing I want to say, which makes me think this is such a weird event, is because this seems to be like the first time that he does this. Like, again, what I'm trying to say is grabbing vessels dedicated to a different God that you're bringing into your feast to get drunk off of to your God seems to be taboo in all regards to all the gods involved, right? But if it's not taboo to your Babylonian gods, is this the first time you've done this? Like, why just this moment here? Why this night?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it reminds me of, I think it's Raphael in the book of First Enoch, that he says he's the one that's been tasked to go incite a civil war amongst the Nephilim before the flood. And so it just makes me think of, like, how did they do that? Right. Was it possibly an angel who prompted his mind to say, hey, go grab the vessels of Yahweh and for your banquet tonight? Just so that he then he brings in a servant of Yahweh to command judgment against him, so that it's all so that he has no doubt that it is Yahweh who is going to judge him. He is disrespecting Yahweh's vessels. Yahweh's servant is coming in and giving him a divine message from Yahweh, whom has already been venerated as a follower of Yahweh in the kingdom by his father, right? So that way he can't in any way whatsoever say after this, if he even lived, to say, oh, that was actually Ninurta. It wasn't, I was being judged by Ninurta. It wasn't Yahweh. You know what I'm saying? So everyone in the room knows, yeah, you've disrespected Yahweh. Yahweh's judging you. My servant Daniel is declaring this judgment. And this is my angelic servant or my celestial servant whose hand you saw writing on the wall to let you know that you're being judged for wickedness right here. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it was very long-winded, but I think so. I'm trying to keep up with everything.
Okay,
so I think it makes sense. Are you saying that you think there was an angel that inspired this king to go get Yahweh's vessels?
I'm just saying that it seems to be there is a precedent for angels being the ones that can go in and somehow, some way prompt the enemy to do something foolishness that can bring judgment upon them.
Okay.
Right. So in this moment, this is what I'm saying. Like, if this is in his mind to do, why has he never done this before? We're just assuming that this is the first time he's done something like this.
Well, that's just an assumption.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So if it is the first time he's done something like this, and we are just assuming anyway that possibly the unclean spirits prompted him to do it for the sake of mockery, what if it was actually an angel that prompted him to do it for the sake of immediate judgment, in which he would not have any question that it was Yahweh judging him, right? Not any of these other gods that he might be worshiping. It's just a thought. We don't know. The text doesn't say. We're just speculating. But it's just interesting because it's like, man, that's like, why this night did you decide to do this? The night that people are already on their way to invade you and take you over and kill you. This is the night you decide to do this? That's pretty weird. You know, that's not a coincidence in my opinion. Anyway, so there's a lot here. Anything else in this chapter before we move on?
No.
Okay, so we got chapter 6. You want to read this one? You don't want to read?
I haven't been reading for a very long time.
I'll read this one. Go ahead. I'll read this one. Just enjoy your tea.
Okay.
It pleased Darius to appoint 120 satraps to rule throughout the kingdom, and over them 3 administrators, including Daniel, to whom these satraps were accountable, so that the king would not suffer loss. Soon, by his extraordinary spirit, Daniel distinguished himself among the administrators and satraps, so the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. Thus, the administrators and satraps sought a charge against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they couldn't find no charge or corruption, because he was trustworthy, and no negligence or corruption was found in him. Finally, these men said, we will never find any charge against this Daniel unless we find something against him concerning the law of his God. So the administrators and satraps went together to the king and said, O King Darius, may you live forever. All the royal administrators, prefects, satraps, advisors, and governors have agreed that the king should establish an ordinance and enforce a decree that for 30 days, anyone who petitions any god or man except you, O king, will be thrown into the den of lions. Therefore, O king, establish a decree and sign the document that it cannot be changed, in accordance with the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be repealed. Therefore, King Darius signed the written decree. Now, when Daniel learned that the document had been signed, he went into his house, where the windows of his upper room opened toward Jerusalem, and 3 times a day he got down his knees, prayed, and gave thanks to his God, just as he had done before. Then these men went as a group and found Daniel petitioning and imploring his God. So they approached the king, and they asked about his royal decree. Did you not sign a decree that for 30 days any man who petitions any god or man except you, O king, will be thrown into the den of lions? The king replied, according to the law of the Medes and Persians, the order stands, and it cannot be repealed. Then they told the king, Daniel, one of the exiles from Judah, shows no regard for you, O king, or for the decree that you've signed. He still makes his petition 3 times a day. As soon as the king heard this, he was deeply distressed and set his mind on delivering Daniel, and he labored until sundown to rescue him. Then the men approached the king together and said to him, remember, O king, that by the law of the Medes and Persians, no decree or ordinance established by the king can be changed. So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the den of lions. The king said to Daniel, may your God, whom you serve continually, deliver you. A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the rings of his nobles, so that nothing concerning Daniel could be changed. Then the king went to his palace and spent the night fasting. No entertainment was brought before him, and sleep fled from him. At the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the den of lions. When he reached the den, he cried out in a voice of anguish, "O Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions?" Then Daniel replied, "O king, may you live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the mouth of the lions. They have not hurt me, for I was found innocent in his sight, and I have done no wrong against you, O king." The king was overjoyed and gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. And when Daniel was lifted out of the den, no wounds whatsoever were found on him, because he has trusted in his God. At the command of the king, the men who had falsely accused Daniel were brought and thrown into the den of lions, they and their children and wives. And before they had breached the bottom of the den, the lions overpowered them and crushed all their bones. Then King Darius wrote to the people of every nation and language throughout the land, "May your prosperity abound. I hereby decree that in every part of my kingdom, men are to tremble in fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and his dominion will never end. He delivers and rescues. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. For he has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions." So Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian.
See, here is the king sending out a decree to the entire nation state that everybody needs to fear the God of Daniel. What?
I know.
No, he's got to go back down. It hasn't been nearly long enough.
It's only been 30, 40 minutes. He should go back to sleep.
Yeah, he should. Yeah, so
this is an interesting one. Clearly these guys are conspiring just with Daniel as the target.
yes. This part about them saying they could find nothing wrong in him, it makes me think about so many of the admonishments we get from a lot of the New Testament letters from Paul and Peter and James talking about our behavior in front of the Gentiles.
Right.
And so that they can find no wrong in you, so that they don't have a right to say anything you've done is wrong. I think that's why the devil has had to pivot and demonize so many things about Christianity, because that's what the nations think is wrong with us. It is our beliefs. It's the
Right.
fact that we don't affirm LGBT, whatever. It's the fact that we don't affirm fornication. It's like it's our actual virtues that we get from the scriptures that are demonized now to find fault in us from the nations. Because if we're walking things out correctly, then we're not doing things even in their culture, we're not breaking their laws, we are, abiding in, the things we can abide in that don't cause us to break any of God's commandments. So they have to still find fault in us. They have to make fault. So it's just interesting that they're like, oh, well, now let's try to get him, he loves serving the law of his God. So let's do something where he's going to be, either have to break the law of his God or break the law of the land,
So this story, along with chapter 3, leads me to think, clearly not by speculation, but I'm deducing from the language here that it was not illegal to worship Yahweh. It was not illegal to worship different gods. There was no general decree in ancient Babylon that you had to worship just one particular pantheon of gods or house of gods. That clearly they had. Look what it says here in verse 7. For 30 days, anyone who petitions any god or man except you, but any god, which would have been the practice of a polytheistic society, to petition all different types of gods, and especially over 120 different provinces, all these different nations from, Britain to India.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to have people worshiping different gods. And it seems as if the Babylonian Empire was okay with it.
Yeah.
It was ecumenical in that regard. Right. But then suddenly they want to focus on, well, we don't want him worshiping his God specifically.
Yeah.
Or anything which is following the law of his God and worship to his God. So it's like, it's interesting, because we see that in chapter 3 as well, when Nebuchadnezzar is incited to build that statue to himself. So then suddenly you just got to bow down to this, when beforehand, we're not suggesting The 3 Hebrews before then were going to the temples of Ninurta
Right.
or Ea
Right.
to worship the Babylonian gods. No, not at all. So it's interesting that it's a polytheistic. So now I just want to draw this out for the people that are listening, who may not have a good historical framework or biblical understanding of the exiles in Babylon. Here's Daniel living in Babylon, the 3 Hebrews living in Babylon. And, the general admonition that you see in Revelation 18, come out of Babylon, my people.
Yeah.
Right. And we have a lot of people in the Torah observant movement thinking that means to create a commune and isolate yourself out in the woods
Yeah.
with a whole bunch of other people. That's not what it means. Here's Daniel and the 3 Hebrews living in Babylon, literally being a part of the governing structures of Babylon, interacting with the kings of Babylon, but they're not a part of Babylon, to the point where Daniel is like, I don't want your gifts.
Yeah.
I'm not serving your gods.
Yeah.
But they're still being called upon in times of, perceived crisis,
Right.
and being valued in this, because they're still interacting with these people.
Right.
They're not hermiting themselves.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They're not saying, oh, I just kill me. I'll never be your advisor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm coming out of Babylon,
Yeah.
just exile me to Ethiopia. I'll never be your advisor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're not saying that.
Yeah.
Like they're doing their daily lives. They're doing what God told them to do, which is to plant a vineyard, settle down, have children, pray for the welfare of Babylon. Like, so this kingdom that they went into exile into actually is allowing them to worship Yahweh.
Yeah.
And acknowledging Yahweh with veneration at times
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to it, when there's persecution that's coming up. So it's so funny because as much as we demonize Babylon,
Yeah.
it's kind of like the United States
Yeah.
as far as the ecumenical, like you can worship whatever God you want.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly there's trends in the United States that are different than in Babylon,
Mm-hmm. whereas
whereas it's majority Christian, right, from the history. But even in these settings that we're seeing in this book, chapters 3 and chapter 6, until it became a point of focus. So that means in these few little moments with the golden statue being built and then Daniel and these guys conspiring against Daniel, in these few little moments, it became an issue for them to worship Yahweh. But that means all these other years, it wasn't an issue.
Right.
So all the other exiles are allowed to worship Yahweh in their own land to the best that they can.
Yes.
Right. Clearly they're not probably having tabernacles.
Yeah.
They're not going to the king's palace or the temples of the Babylonian gods to try to emulate tabernacles, but like to the best that they can, they're trying to still worship Yahweh in the land of the exile.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what we do. That's what we do. So this book is an incredible example for us today.
Yeah.
How we can interact inside of a world that's not worshiping Yahweh, maintain our integrity and our righteous walk with Yahweh. We may face persecutions at times. He's going to come through for us, or we're going to get martyred. Either way, we're trusting in Yahweh. And 99% of the time, you're going to be allowed to worship Yahweh in peace.
This cannot be.
I don't know what's going on. He's struggling to go back to sleep. Did he have his pants on him, or was he?
Yes, he's got
Okay.
pants on. Well, shorts.
Yeah, he's struggling.
No, he's back down.
He just laid back down. He's getting up and he keeps raising up.
The other thing that, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, sweetie. Go ahead.
The other thing that I feel like some of these middle books have done for me, at least, I can't speak for anyone else. I would like to encourage others to maybe let it do the same thing for you. But a lot of these middle books have really humbled me in terms of my judgments of pagan, unbelieving nations, leaders, because there are so many times here where God is literally using pagan leaders of pagan nations to accomplish his will in certain ways. And now I'm not saying that means clearly, oh, they repented and now they're following him and covenant with him, but it does make me just want to fall even further into the instruction from Yeshua and Paul and Peter and all of them, telling us to pray for our enemies and bless them who curse us and all of that, because there's a part of that involves the fact that you never know where God is working in this world, even in and through people that we think he would never even sniff at. You know, people, we think, you know, a lot of us maybe kind of have, you know, kind of desensitized ourselves into thinking they're throwaways anyways. They don't believe in him. They don't follow him. They're, you know, blind sinners. You know, some of these books have really encouraged me and challenged me to try and have a little more compassion in my heart for people that, as far as I know, don't follow Yahweh. And also a little bit more restraint in terms of being so certain that the Father would never work through people like that. He would never use people like this, whatever. Because he clearly does. There are people in the scriptures that I would say he would never work through a wicked pagan king like that. He would never, you know, use unbelievers who worship false gods to accomplish his will, but he does. So that's something that challenges me, I would say, with a lot of these middle books, and Daniel especially, because Daniel himself is such a great example of the behavior. But also, we get quite a few examples in the book of Daniel of God working through people that most of us would just label worthless Babylonian pagan, you know, Baal worshippers. So that's the other thing that I think about a lot while we're reading through books like these, especially Daniel.
Yeah, it's a good thought, sweetie. So Darius clearly shows concern for David, right? He's Darius, concern for Daniel. He's up all night fasting, trying to figure out a way to get him out of this. You know, what's interesting to me is that even though he does stand by what he feels obligated to stand by because of he signed the decree. When Daniel gets out, he then says to those who conspired against him, he seems to like rightly have figured out what happened.
Yes.
You know, like, oh, these guys weren't being legitimate trying to get me to make this new decree. They were just trying to entrap Daniel.
Yeah, and this is a biblical punishment. The false witnesses receiving the same punishment that they wanted the man they accused to receive.
And what's interesting is that according to the decree, it's not falsely accused.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the king is realizing that the decree was bunk.
Yes, that he was tricked into signing the decree to begin with.
And so it was still considered a false accusation because it was an orchestrated plan to use lawfare.
Right.
And manipulate the king himself.
Yes.
Right? Which is pretty offensive to a king.
Yeah.
Right? But it's interesting the way it's deemed here is that, oh, they were falsely accusing Daniel. And that was the verdict, if you will. That was the final conclusion of this, of the king. So the king went through the motions. He put Daniel in the lion's den. Daniel was miraculously saved. And the king is extremely relieved and amazed to be like, oh, wow. So we got this weird legal fulfillment. Like, I did throw you in the den, but you're still alive. So now I get to pull you out.
Yeah. No
one expected that. And I realize what happened now. They were just trying to target you, and I'm going to kill all of them. Yeah. It's like, this is one of those rare moments where you see a king go, you know what? You guys are pretty twisted. Yeah. How about I just remove you from the equation?
Yeah.
Who were these guys?
Some of the other satraps and
the other governors.
Yeah. The other governing people. They, you know, I wonder if some of these guys have been around for a while since the first Nebuchadnezzar, you know, because these are people that Daniel is being put in charge of over them. So, you know, I wonder if there's been, beef with these guys and Daniel for this whole time. Daniel's been in and out of leadership over them.
These are politicians. These are bureaucracy.
Yeah. Well, also you have the aspect of the fact that many of them are also diviners and they're also trying to like practice these dark arts. And Daniel puts them all to shame. Daniel makes it's just like Moses putting the magicians of Egypt to shame. So I'm sure that aside from the political aspect, there's also some of the political aspect in terms of the spiritual gifts that these men thought that they had that just can't hold a candle to the actual true gifts that Daniel had. So I'm sure that was part of it too.
Here's the part I don't like: that women and children suffered as well.
Yeah.
This is like what we see with Korah's rebellion, that you know, all the tents the entire families of Korah and all the men who rebelled with
Mhm.
Korah, they all suffered death as a punishments
Consequence.
of Yahweh.
Yeah.
And it's like that collateral damage. Now,
Mhm.
this doesn't mean that these people are condemned to hell.
Right.
These particular women and children here. Clearly, it seems as if, you know, I'm not trying to judge. God's going to judge everybody, right? I'm not trying to judge anyone in this situation for their soul's outcome, but clearly there's judgment happening upon them in their lifetime.
Yeah.
And it seems to be an ancient world common thing that the children and wives were included in the punishment when the husband did something this egregious that
Yeah.
deserved death.
Yeah.
And it's almost to the sense of mutiny, like Korah's rebellion,
Mhm.
where they're trying to manipulate the king
Yes.
to do their will
Yeah.
instead of the king's will, right? When the king clearly was like, wait a minute, what did I just sign? Oh, and it's to kill Daniel?
Yeah.
That's not my will.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, you have
It
to
can't
follow
be
through.
repealed.
You can't change your mind. Like, I imagine he wanted to slay them then and there.
Yeah, he probably there probably was an aspect of actual anger, like being personally offended.
So it's just an interesting declaration by him. Interesting way for him to take care of the situation. And like, you know, there were a lot of synonymous is probably the wrong word. There were a lot of seemingly similar laws carried out through many of the ancient world that you also find in Yahweh's law.
Yeah.
And then the final end of this, just like with Nebuchadnezzar was, Nebuchadnezzar, remember, after the 3 Hebrews were pulled out
Mm-hmm.
with not even the smell of smoke on their clothes.
Yeah.
And then he also has this emotional moment like Darius does, and he starts praising Yahweh.
Yeah.
You know, and I think this is an interesting concept where it's kind of like in your face. Here's a moment where if there was ever a miraculous thing that needed to happen to cause a conversion, boy, these are those moments.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You know what else this makes me think of is how often, and this isn't exclusive just to the Torah crowd. This is the wider Christian truther body. When someone comes out of unbelief and comes into the walk with Christ, and they're doing it in public, like maybe they were an influencer or there's some sort of celebrity, or you know they have name recognition or whatever. There's so many people that will immediately start attacking that person's conversion as false and looking for all the signs that they're still in the world and all this stuff, and forgetting that, okay, first of all, it is a process to come out of the world. It took me, I've shared my story. It took me like 3 months to even realize I was being called to the actual Christ of the actual Bible. I was still so brainwashed and programmed in my new age thinking that I was trying to learn about Jesus in the Gnostic texts because it didn't dawn on me to go look in the Bible. So there is a process that goes on here. And it just makes me think about, you know, if Darius had this kind of change of heart now in modern times, how many people would be doing like exposed videos on him and breaking down all the symbolism of how he's still a pagan king. He's still, you know, worshiping Baal. And then also with it saying that Daniel prospered under the reign of Darius and Cyrus Persian, how many people would also then be like linking Daniel in with Darius and these Persians and these pagans? Look, you know, he prospered. That means that he was wealthy. That means that he did well monetarily. That's what it means when you're prospered. So, you know, it's like people, it's just constantly reminding me to stop looking at outward appearances. Because God truly does judge the heart, and that's not excusing all of the times we can see actual bad fruit from people. But man, you know, there's so many times in here I read something, I'm like, oh my gosh, someone would so do an exposed video on this prophet if he was doing all this today.
So his decree, did he take off his Babylonian signet ring when he made this decree?
I don't know.
Did he take off his kingly royal Babylonian king crown?
Did he shave whatever kind of beard shape it may have been in? You know, whatever kind of ritual beard he may have had. Yeah.
Did he put on tzitzits to make this decree?
I don't know.
So yeah, this is exactly what Jesus is talking about when he says stop judging by appearances.
Yeah.
You know, and this is where like it takes look in the same way that like Jesus says, no one who soon confesses me will then turn and does a miracle of healing and then turn around and deny me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So in the same way, the Son represents the Father. So the people that are
Mhm.
doing this to the Father in the same way,
Right.
they're not going to soon turn around and deny him.
Right.
So it's an interesting concept because now, baby, we're looking at like, this is Nebuchadnezzar II, King Darius, and Cyrus like has his own entire story.
Yeah.
Even mentioned in Isaiah
Yeah.
chapter 45.
Yeah.
Like Elijah wrote Cyrus
Yeah, I was
a
going to
letter.
say, isn't he the one who had a whole letter written to him before he was even born or something?
Yeah. So Yahweh is going out of his way.
Yeah.
Jonah with the Assyrian king.
Yeah.
Yahweh's going out of his way to reach these power players in other kingdoms to turn them to repentance.
Yeah. Even Jeremiah, it literally says, I called you to be a prophet to the nations.
That's right. That's right.
It's like Sean and I were reading Jeremiah a few months ago. That was the book we were in together. And
chapter 1.
We both read chapter 1. We're like, how did we never notice this? I'm calling you, Jeremiah, to be a prophet to the nations. Yeah, I just think a lot of us really have allowed this black and white divide to take place in our minds. And we just label anyone who's not doing the faith walk as we think they should be doing it, not even necessarily according to Torah, but just because Christians, I think, have this problem across the board of looking at people and they're not completing the things on our checklist. And so we, instead of just, okay, that leaving them to the Lord, we get into this mode of suspicion and accusation and speculation and accusation.
Mhm.
And that definitely
you've seen it in the debates I've done with the
completely.
Like the Trinitarians, they don't like the fact I won't affirm the homoousios, the Greek philosophical construct, the essence, but that they believe in. And so therefore they don't think I'm a believer in Christ, regardless of any fruit in my life, regardless of my words of declaration of adoration, praise, and repentance to the God of Israel, right? The God of heaven and earth. They don't care.
Right.
In the same way, the Calvinist will look at the non-Calvinist and be like, oh, well, they're not the elect because they reject the message.
Right.
And they reject the 5 doctrines of grace, and they reject tulip, and all their little man-made nonsense. They're the way they've decided to walk with God.
Yeah.
People who don't, they then look at them people and say, oh, well, they're not saved.
Yeah.
In the same way you see it amongst, oh my goodness, like the Orthodox don't believe the Catholics are saved. The Orthodox don't believe the Protestants are saved. Like you're not a part of the true church. You haven't taken the sacrament of communion with us, and you haven't received the real presence of Christ in you. You must not be a believer. Like all of it is just the enemy time and time again, finding as many ways as possible to divide the body of believers, to steal the unity of the body of faith, and to get people bickering over just little nonsense, traditions, genealogies, myths, whatever they can. You know what I'm saying?
Honestly, I've been woken up to the fact that it's literal snares that Satan is putting all throughout the body of Christ, down every single rabbit hole we go down. There are snares in there, and all he has to do is get us falsely accusing each other. All he has to do is get us saying, oh, you're not truly a believer. You're not truly a believer. You're not truly a believer, because all these words are being recorded. Everybody forgets that the things that we say about other believers are being recorded. So if we're going to say another believer is not truly a believer, we need to be absolutely sure of that. And if we're not absolutely sure of that, I would say we probably shouldn't be saying it, because if that's being recorded as an accusation in heaven and it turns out to be false, what happens on Judgment Day? How many of us may, wake up after we've died and we're in the wrong side of Sheol, and we did all these things outwardly, but we were walking around falsely accusing the brethren all the time, and we were saying who wasn't truly saved. That is a thought that terrifies me, and I've been trying to get that message out to the Torah community in particular for like 6-7 years now. Once I started waking up to it and realizing how guilty I was, I looked around at the community and was like, oh my gosh, not only are so many of us guilty of this, so many of us are teaching others to do this and to have this attitude and this heart towards everyone who's not on a specific Torah path. And, we are heaping coals upon ourselves when we're doing that. We're not building treasures in heaven. We are building punishments for ourselves. So that's the other thing that just gets me about everybody who's so calm and comfortable with saying, oh yeah, oh, you don't believe this doctrine, oh, you're not a true believer, oh, you don't believe this doctrine, oh, you're not my brother in the faith. you're headed for the lake of fire. Like, people just don't understand the true weight of those words. Anyway, I gotta go get my bread.
Mhm.
I'm gonna hit the bathroom.
So we'll pick up chapter 7 here in just a minute when she comes back. Yeah, our heart has been consistently for us to sow the word with people, to build them up in love and encouragement, not to take a denominational hardline stance and just say, oh, because they haven't come into the fullness of God's instructions or to the understanding of the instructions that you have, and therefore they're not a believer. That is not what we're called to do. And that's not what we encourage on this channel. We encourage people to, like, everyone's on a different level of discipleship. And obviously, if they're giving their heart to Christ and trying to be a disciple, they're on a different level of discipleship. And it's not going to be the exact same walk with the exact same verbiage sometimes, because they don't. I mean, anytime you study public speaking, you study communication, you study debate, you realize that people communicate differently. So even someone that could have more discipline in their life than you, but just not be able to communicate their understanding of it, and you're running around thinking that you're holier than them, and that and that they're not of the faith because they're not doing or be able to verbalize or articulate what you can articulate. Meanwhile, privately, they've got a ton more discipline to the commandments of Yahweh than you do. So it's something that we just need to be very humble about. We need to consider. We're not called, as Romans 14:4 talks about, we're not called to go around and judge a servant of the master, because they aren't our servants. They're Christ's servants. He'll judge them. He'll prune them. He'll train them up, right? He's teaching them and guiding them. He's going to shepherd them, right? So many times we like to fall into shepherding people that are not been given to us to shepherd, if I could say it like that. So I just want to encourage folks that, even in this moment here, we don't get all the conversation with Daniel and someone like Darius. Clearly Daniel was endeared to Darius throughout their interaction, their acquaintanceship, their who knows, as it says in the chapter, Daniel was given esteem by Darius and risen to prominence and esteem in the kingdom. So clearly Darius had an affinity, had a fondness, had a liking for Daniel. And it's it makes you ask yourself, did Daniel, who is extremely wise, did Daniel teach Darius anything about God's laws and ways? Or even if Darius, Daniel could have chastised Darius for being unwise and signing that decree, right? And making a foolish decision, but it didn't. He just showed him patience and love. He still continued to show him respect. And he let Yahweh fight his battle for him. And, hopefully Darius continued to be a believer and abandon worship of other gods. Hopefully he became monotheistic in his personal life. Clearly, as we talked about before, because there did not seem to be a general law within the Babylonian Empire that you had to worship one God. So that actually is a great legal loophole for people like Darius in their personal life to worship, also in the same way, like with the Naaman from Aramea, right?
Yeah.
He didn't seem to be worried about going back to his land and worshiping Yahweh there. He was only worried about, one of my duties to the king is when he goes into the temple of his God and worships his God, I have to help him. But he didn't seem to be worried about, I'm going to be persecuted because they won't let me worship Yahweh when I go back there. No, that wasn't his argument at all.
Seems like Yahweh was a well-known deity at the time from all the other nations. And it was kind of a normal thing that everybody had their god that they worshipped, or multiple gods that they worshipped.
Yeah.
What's interesting about Naaman that just dawned on me is that he also didn't pack up his life in the other country and come move to Jerusalem to be near the temple.
Right.
And they had, and there was an actual nation to go join at that time. Right now it's so easy for us to say, well, there's no standing temple. There's no lawfully ordained priesthood. There's no lawful nation over there for us to go join and be part of. I think so many of us assume that's what we would all do if it really was here on earth and everything was ordained and lawful. But even when it was, Naaman was not compelled to.
Hey, look, yes, you're right, because the foreigner is supposed to be able to go worship in the same way as the native born.
Yeah.
And look at Acts chapter 2.
Yeah.
What do we see? All those people from different nations come in to celebrate Pentecost, Shavuot. Why didn't they just move there?
Right.
What are they doing in all these other nations?
Yeah.
Why are they still in all these other nations?
Yeah. Why didn't they come out of Babylon?
Because they knew the prophecies.
Yes.
They knew the prophecies,
Yeah, they
guys.
understood.
They knew that like there was going to be 2 dispersions, a final destruction of the temple, and then the kingdom come. That they knew the prophecies. It's in Enoch, it's in Testament of Levi, it's in Isaiah, it's in Deuteronomy. I don't feel like I feel like, you know, I feel like the modern believer has been so bamboozled by the teachings of modern day Judaism that they don't have any clue about the perspective of Jews, faithful, devout Jews to Yahweh in the first century and what they understood. And there was no gangbusters rush to migrate to the land of Israel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they were like, nah, well, you know, we're controlled by the Romans everywhere we go anyway.
Yeah.
Like we don't have sovereignty anyway. Oh, all the prophets have been telling us that this isn't the kingdom come anyway.
Mhm.
It was just the people within Judea that were expecting a militant Messiah to show up and oust Rome.
It seemed like it was a certain sect of the leaders that had these beliefs.
Yes, we even see this. That's a deep cut, but you even see this within the writings. Anyway, it's a deep cut. Yes, there's a different understanding. I talked about this in our basic course, but there's a different understanding of Christians and Jews, Jewish Christians who lived outside of Judea, even after the temple was destroyed. They could move back there if they wanted to, but not all of them wanted to because they knew it was the diaspora. They knew it was the time of dispersion. And they weren't in some big hurry to get back.
Yeah.
Because they knew Yahweh would draw them back on the day of the Lord at the resurrection. It was not a thing like modern Judaism and all this big gangbuster rush to try to solidify the boundaries of Israel and bring all these people in, even though they don't do DNA tests.
Yeah, and make
all
it
that
like
kind of
this
stuff
tourist trap for Christians.
is pure Judaism, modern Judaism, not even first century Judaism.
Yeah.
Because they weren't preaching that stuff. Did you guys know that there were like in the militia, the Melito, the guy Melito, the pastor Melito from Asia Minor, from a church in Asia Minor, his congregation in approximately 170 AD asks him, "Hey, by the way, how do we know what are the actual books of the quote unquote Old Testament? What they would consider the Jewish collection of books? What do we know? How do we know like that the books that we think of are the actual books?" And this pastor named Melito said, "You know what? I don't know. Let me go travel down to Jerusalem and talk to the rabbis that are there, and I'll ask them what they think their collection is." Right. And that's how he got his collection of scripture, in addition to the New Testament books that they had, for his particular church in his particular region. What does that mean? What does that tell you? For one, they didn't have a set canon. For two, there were rabbis and Jews still living in Jerusalem in 170 AD and have been for a long, long time before the 20th century. So it's just it's a fascinating mindset change to see that this weirdness that we've been sold in the modern life, that so many Christians don't read their Bible, they don't study their Bible, so they just have been told, oh, the Old Testament is for the Jews are the favorite people of God is bringing them back into the land. It's a wonderful fulfillment of prophecy, and you need to give them money, by the way.
Lots and lots of money.
Crazy. Oh, by the way, you need to pay them. God's bringing them in the land, but you need to pay them. It's just a weirdness, and none of it is within none of it even matches their own Jewish history of other Jews who understood the diaspora, who understood there was no, Acts 2, there was no like great pending discussion or like, oh my goodness, we're here at Pentecost because the Romans finally allowed us to be. No, they had freedom to travel everywhere. That's how Paul went on his missionary journeys. That's how Peter did his missionary journeys. They had freedom to travel all throughout the Roman Empire, like to any nation that would actually allow them to be traveled. Like it wasn't this weird domineering control set that we think of when we take little slivers like the book of Esther and we think, oh, Haman's trying to persecute the Jews. They must have been under persecution everywhere they went all the time.
Yeah.
If you listen to modern day Jew apologists,
Yeah, and honestly, like it's all they don't even try to say that the persecutions that have happened over, last 700-ish years are because of their faith in particular. It's turned into a racial thing. And then, look, this is the forbidden rabbit hole. We're not going to go too deep into it. But when you go look into the actual edicts that had when they were actually kicking them out,
yeah, it wasn't about race.
There were lists of behaviors that were being
mostly about
addressed.
usury.
So
yeah,
like there's more, even the Roma that I wrote about the other day, there were legitimate issues within the culture of the Roma people that may have caused problems with them and the cultures around them. And the same can be said for a lot of, did you mean to have us off center?
Yeah, I was just
feeling like I need to.
Oh, let's put your camera back on.
Sorry. I'm like, not sure if
I was just trying to give a breakdown earlier.
No, when I'm gone, it makes sense. But when you really get into the details, like it wasn't because they were keeping Shabbat and all the nations around them were so mad that they're doing Shabbat. Like there was some actual behaviors going on that, they're welcome. They were welcomed into a lot of these places and their welcome was rescinded. So, and that actually turns out to be the case for quite a few people groups throughout the world. I looked into, I'm like, are there other groups that are just like constantly being thrown out of countries? And there are. It's more than just the Jews and the Romas, actually. And
it's based on the behavior.
Yeah, it almost seems like every corner of the world has some people group that has been like a consistent issue in terms of their culture not meshing with the cultures that they're trying to live with. So yeah, it's a whole forbidden rabbit hole. We're not allowed to say these things, guys. We're not allowed to notice these things.
Yeah, stop being so antiseptic.
Anyways, let's do, what are we on?
Chapter 7. We got chapter 7 to finish. I was just trying to draw the point for everyone that's listening that we should not. You hear Sunday school versions of Daniel's moments,
yeah,
like we just read with the writing on the wall, with the lion's den, with the 3 Hebrews being thrown into the fire, with Esther. You hear these Sunday school moments, but you don't get the back history. You don't get the, like, this is why we feel these deep dives are important.
Yeah.
To where we can show you that just because they were in exile didn't mean they were 100% persecuted at all times.
Yeah.
Right. And while they're in exile, they are still able to worship Yahweh according to their own convictions and interact with the people around them with love, to the point where they're being the covenant promises being fulfilled within their circumstance, that God would give them favor in the eyes of their captors. So that can absolutely happen for you today in the country that you're in today. So this woe is me mentality is not, do not let Judaism give you that mentality.
Yeah, honestly,
you are favored by Yahweh, and his covenant applies to you wherever you are on the earth.
And not just that, but this is another difference between the groups, the Jews and the Christians, that I've noticed as well, in terms of like our collective consciousness, so to speak, like our hive mind. That woe is me is absolutely the collective consciousness of the Jews, and we are hated and we are persecuted and oh, poor us, and we need to be protected. And meanwhile, Christianity, like what we see in Scripture and what we have seen since, is this rejoicing when you're found worthy to be persecuted for the name of Christ. Like it's a complete mindset change to go from feeling like put upon because, oh, everybody hates us because of our faith, versus darn right, everybody hates me because of my faith. That's right. And I will go to the grave refusing to deny my faith, like, yeah, bring it on. So it's interesting also the different dynamics in terms of the actual mindset that each religion has encouraged their congregants to walk around with, because in Christianity, it's much more an owning of the. Can you imagine if Christians got together and tried to have some kind of league that went after anyone who defamed Christians and tried to destroy the lives of anyone who said bad things about Christians and constantly harped on every time Christians have been, I mean, there's like how many thousands of Christians that have been killed in Nigeria already this year. Like just the numbers that the Christians have in terms of how many of us have been killed for our faith. And we don't walk around harping on it constantly. We don't walk around making it our whole identity.
Right. I've seen back in after 9/11, Islam created a league like that, and we've always had the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, which is a Jewish protection league.
Mm.
But remember, back after 9/11 in politics, there was I can't remember the name of it, but it was an Islamic
an ADL for Islam.
Yeah, basically.
I did not
Because they were like, stop saying all Islamists are terrorists.
It sounds like they gave up on that, because I feel like the policing of speech surrounding Muslims really has not been like it was certainly under Obama's presidency, but even during Biden. But anyways, yeah, it's an interesting mindset difference that I've noticed, that I'm like, hey, I mean, a victim mentality is something that I think leads us into all kinds of wickedness as justifications for making sure we're never victimized again, quote unquote. Right. And that's what I mean, see.
It is communism.
And that's the difference that I see, is that the Jews don't own the persecution and take it with, we were found worthy to be persecuted. They're like, everybody needs to pay for this,
Right. And, like I've tried to share before, I think it's a part of the curse, by the way. And this is the curse that accompanies, it's actually in 28, that accompanies this mindset that we see from Jewish people all around the world, who continue to harp on this mentality. Let me find it real quick for you. And 40, where would it go? One second. Where'd it go? Worship, honor, reading it fast. Curses, but Joseph, nation, evil. Oh, here it is. Okay. Here it is. When you're scattered among those nations, you'll find no repose, not even a resting place for the sole of your foot. Yahweh will give you a trembling heart, a failing eye, and a despairing soul. Your life will hang in doubt before you. You'll be afraid day and night, never certain of survival. What is the general push of modern day political Judaism?
Yeah.
Is this, they're constantly oppressed. They're constantly trembling of heart.
Yeah.
They're constantly, oh my goodness, no one, they can't find because they've rejected Yahweh.
Yeah.
So even though they may not be bowing down to a particular idol they built,
right,
they're rejecting Yahweh because they rejected his prophets. They rejected his law. They're following Talmudic law.
Yeah.
So like it is, they're living in the curse of Deuteronomy 28 right now.
Yeah.
With their complaints, with their victimhood subjugation of, oh, nobody likes us. We're always oppressed. Like, you come on, repent and find some courage, young man.
Yeah. Yeah. If they actually started, following Yeshua and keeping the law properly, then maybe they wouldn't have the world would still hate them, but it would be a different kind of hatred. Because I can't say that the world doesn't hate us, but also we managed to find favor, within this world regardless. Yahweh still does promise that.
All right. Chapter 7.
Yeah, I guess this is it's
a long chapter. It's a big chapter.
Sure that we're at what, 90 minutes already?
It's 90 minutes. Yeah. Yeah. We should probably just save it.
Okay. Yeah. Let's save it. Let's do some Q&A. I feel like I didn't get any Q&A last week. Oops.
Yeah. We'll just change the thumbnails and we'll save it for next week. But I think, honestly, guys, I just think it is important. I think it's important that we remember the mindset that we're supposed to have. These stories are for our lessons. 1 Corinthians chapter 10. These scriptures are for our teachings. And we see how people that are in exile are supposed to behave in the nations around them that are considered the land of your enemies. And the curses of people that you will receive when you don't worship Yahweh and you're in the land of your enemies. We see those played out, right? And it's just, this is where Paul was correct. in Romans 11 when he talks about the envy of his people. May his people feel envy for Christians and get them to turn to Christ finally,
Yeah.
right? If they declare themselves to actually be a descendant of Abraham. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I've even heard that many of the I heard this one guy talking about doing an interview with people in Israel many years ago, and he asked him, he asked him what tribe they're from, and the guy was like, "Oh, I don't know, we don't know." He's like, "Wait, you don't know what tribe you're from?" He's like, "No, we don't know." He's like, "We're just," he goes, the guy answered this pastor and said, "I actually think that I'm a son of a convert." And he goes, because our family name was Abrami, and that was the name in the nation from where we came. That was the name of the surname they would give to converts to Judaism. They would give them Abrami
Interesting.
because then you're of the faith of Abraham, but not specifically a lineage of Jacob.
Interesting.
And so he's like, so our family name was Abrami a few generations ago, and then now this guy's living in Israel and is all
Yeah.
pro-Israel, but like he's just like, we're a convert. We don't know if we don't have any true lineage. We don't know. But it didn't matter because he's following Talmud.
Yeah.
He's not following. And of course, that's if he's even religious.
Yeah.
He's a lot of them are just secular over there.
Yeah.
So and that's another thing that you cannot be like the ultimate spitting in the face, talking about taking the vessels and drinking in them to false gods. The ultimate spitting in the face to Yahweh. Oh, you were scattered from the land for not worshiping Yahweh, but trying to stay in the land. Oh, so now you want to go back to the land and you still refuse to worship Yahweh.
Yeah.
Like you're not even trying to be an Orthodox.
Yeah.
You're just fully secular at the Pride Parade in Tel Aviv and trying to be in the land. Like, bro, what?
Well, and they've got some of these really orthodox sects that are clearly melded into the government and decisions of the government, but I don't know if they're like actual elected people. So like they've got that, that real dark rabbinic part of Judaism, like they're with them as well, approving these things. So even the ones who aren't technically secular, who are very, very Jewish, I mean, they're denying Yahweh and everything that they do
Right.
as well in terms of, what they're approving over there and just the Zionist doctrine in and of itself. That's why I always like to remind people that there are Jews in this world, actual religious Jews, orthodoxly religious Jews who completely reject Zionism because they may be ignorant of Yeshua and still have the blindness to Yeshua, but man, they understand we are still under judgment of the dispersion. There was no prophecy that said we were to go take that land back ourselves, that there was no prophecy for that we come and create the nation. They understand the gospel of the kingdom, So that's definitely something that this whole thing that's going on in America where you're anti-septic the moment that you don't support every single thing some foreign nation does. I'm like, hey, what about all the septics who are actual septic and they don't agree with Zionism, come on. You guys in the chat telling us to go, Max. That's got to be the next t-shirt.
Mhm.
That's got to be the next t-shirt that they put out.
Flatless is asking, why are there leftists so sympathetic to Islam but not Christianity? It's just the spirit within it, in my opinion. Islam they're not serving Christ. They don't believe he's the Son of God, and they reject him as the Son, come in the flesh. And so the leftist mentality, I'm pretty sure that a lot of Islamists countries, a lot of Islamist people ascribe to concepts of socialism. I mean, they already believe in Sharia law, which is its own form of authoritarian collectivistic control, which is the base root philosophy for communism. So leftists being communist leaning, they're going to identify ideologically with the type of control. And for many cases, the leftists are sympathetic to Islam because they're cowards, because they know Islam will kill them if they speak out against Islam. And so they don't want the beef. They're going along to get along in their mind for depends on what we're talking about, but usually for political advantage. And so this is why they cater to people that are not Christian, but they clearly have a disdain for Christianity as well. What are your thoughts on this, if you have any?
As a former leftist, I can say for me, I know now that I hated Christianity and not any other religion because Christianity has the truth within it, and whatever demons, I was under the influence of course, are not going to like Christianity. No matter how bad all of us in the Torah crowd think Christianity is and how unscriptural and how, oh, it's actually the religion of the beast and all this stuff. Satan does not like Christianity and doesn't want any form of it. So, of course, he's going to go in and try to pollute it in any way he can. So, that aside, I would also say that when I was a leftist, I was an unbeliever. There's an actual, some kind of blindness there because I studied the Quran for like 5 years with a Muslim guy from Tunisia that I was like in a long distance relationship with. And I never noticed all these issues in the Quran. It wasn't until I became a Christian, I started looking at it from that perspective that I saw what a dangerous religion it was. So in my blindness, though, I never took the initiative to go look at any of the arguments against Islam, just from a political perspective, just from the perspective of the history of Islam and the caliphates, and what the Crusades in the Holy Land were actually about. Like, I had this whole false narrative in my head that was programmed into me from the left that Islam is not something you need to worry about because it's just this religion of peace, and those evil Christians in the Crusades, and it's the evil Christians who are dangerous to the Muslims. And it really, I believe, comes mostly from the spiritual that's going on, obviously, because there's no spirit of Christ in Islam. So of course, unbelievers aren't going to have a problem with Islam based on that alone. But also the pure ignorance, the pure uneducation, the purely people have no clue what is actually in the Quran and the Hadith. The Hadith is really the big one that I learned about after I became a Christian. Was like, oh my gosh, this is where most of the horrible stuff is. Very convenient for them. And just not knowing the history of Islam as an actual freaking world power, like just not understanding that aspect. So that's my expert opinion as a former leftist.
Tracy Bell is asking, should we be gleaning any info from the sizes given for the statue, the 666? Personally, I don't think so. I mean, it's a pagan statue. It's clearly a false god statue to honor Nebuchadnezzar. The concept of the 666 we see in the book of First Kings, as far as it's chapter 11, I believe. Whereas that was the amount of tribute the other nations would give King Solomon, 666 talents of gold. And a lot of people have inferred through mystery religion, through gematria, through all that kind of stuff that, this must be in correlation to the mark of the beast somehow, some way. I think there's also, within the secret societies, it seems to be some kind of number that they have significance for.
Yeah.
I don't study specifically all the gematria and the significance that is held within secret societies. I'm not part of any secret society, so I personally don't know what we would glean from that from chapter 3, as far as the size of the statue that they were supposed to worship. Other than just as far as the mystery school religions, they've always ascribed certain importance to numbers. I don't think I've ever heard an explanation of what 666 cubits, I think it was in cubits, which is different from the measurements we use in the United States and England. So either way, I don't really think it has any spiritual impact. With all due respect, sister, I don't think it's something that we should definitely learn the actual text and what it's teaching us first and foremost. And that's what we should be looking to glean from, not from potential gematria. All right, Ruben is asking about Enoch 10:17. The righteous begat thousands of children. Are they not like the angels, not married and given in marriage? So in our understanding, the context of that particular prophecy about fulfilling their Sabbaths and the righteous living amongst them, this is going to be the aspect of the kingdom come with the nations that are judged as sheep and being taught the law of God, living outside the kingdom, interacting with the leadership of the kingdom. Inside the kingdom are the resurrected, glorified. This will be a millennial reign prophecy. So inside the kingdom that descends to the earth, there's the resurrected, glorified saints of God under Christ's, Yeshua's leadership. And that ministering force is interacting with the nations that have come and are encamped around the city to begin the millennial reign, who are learning the law of God, who are judged as sheep. So they've seen a sense of righteousness within them that Christ is going to now mold into actual lawful behavior. This is how there's peace on the earth. The goats have already been removed from the equation. So then this is how they're going to live for 1,000 years. Their lifespan is going to increase because they have access to the water of the tree of life and the medicine from the leaves of the tree of life. And this is how their lifespan is going to greatly increase during the millennial reign. And yes, they're going to beget, lots of children and grandchildren for sure. It's going to be a population explosion like we've never, ever experienced before. So just like in all books of prophecy, Isaiah is synonymous with First Enoch when it does this type of thing, where it'll have a small little moment of prophecy and it just gives you a glimpse, a few statements, right? It doesn't give you all the context of like, this is where it becomes our diligence, our study, our responsibility to study, to learn the gospel of the kingdom that Christ preached. So then when we see little points of prophecy that just mention a small detail somewhere in the storyline, we have a better understanding overall of the story to gauge, oh, this is talking about this moment in the storyline. So that would be synonymous that you're going to see with Isaiah 65 and Isaiah 61 and 62. So there's Enoch and Isaiah are like super compatible as far as prophecies about the coming kingdom and the second coming of Christ. So just keep that in mind. Flatus is asking, do you think Isaiah the prophet authored all 66 chapters in the book? This is a debate among scholars. I personally don't know. I've never seen any information that definitively solves the debate, right? And so a lot of people, in case you're not aware, scholars have suggested that chapter 40 through 66 was written by someone else, but it was just ascribed to Isaiah.
Okay.
I'm guessing he's asking because of what we mentioned earlier about Cyrus and how he's prophesied in Isaiah 45. Mm-hmm. But yet Cyrus is like 100 years past Isaiah's death.
Yeah.
So that gives people the thought of like, well, how is he writing about Cyrus receiving a letter from Isaiah if Isaiah is already dead during the time that Cyrus is reigning in Babylon, right? Isaiah was already be dead. So this is where people think, oh, there must be a pseudonym author for these chapters from 40 to 66.
Okay.
It's hard to say. Again, that's just assuming they're written chronologically anyway.
Yeah.
This is the same problem with the scrolls of Ezekiel. Is it's well known that they're not chronological. This is why when you really study Ezekiel, you start to see some prophecies that take place at the beginning of the dispersion of the kingdom of Judah, in the younger years of Ezekiel's life, versus other prophecies that took place much later at the end of Ezekiel's life, after they're already both houses are fully in dispersion.
I mean, even Daniel, it's kind of like, did Daniel write the book of Daniel? Because a lot of it is third person. And then, I mean, we have a whole chapter that's ascribed to Nebuchadnezzar himself. So,
right.
Who wrote Daniel?
Again, we attribute, even the first, second century Christians attributed all the scriptures that we have today to Ezra.
Okay.
Remember, he's the one who was tasked to restore them in second Ezra. I think it's 4 o'clock. She's getting earlier every day. She needs a bone. Did we bring any bones up here for them?
I have never had a dog that actually talks under their breath like this one does. And she knows we're talking about her right now, too.
You would think she's a husky, but she's... All right. Ruben's asking, how does Judaism account for their lack of priesthood if they reject Christ as their high priest? I have a quote that I've presented. For one, they ignored the concept altogether. In every thread I've ever been on, in my interview with Asher Mesa, and every thread I've been on, asking anyone as part of Judaism about the priesthood, they ignore it all completely. And I found a quote from a guy approximately 100 AD, and I've mentioned it in several videos in the past. I just don't have the quote immediately available right now, but it's also recorded in the Talmud, and it's about I want to say Rabbi Jonathan, a very popular rabbi in the 1st century AD. He's walking with one of his pupils and looking at the destroyed temple in Jerusalem. No remaining wall, by the way. And they're walking through Jerusalem and looking at the destroyed remains that the Romans destroyed the temple, just as Christ prophesied. No stone left upon another. And the pupil asked the rabbi, the famous rabbi at the time, how are we going to make atonement if our temple is destroyed? And the rabbi says, oh, it's okay. We don't need a temple or a priest anymore. We can just, our acts of kindness and charity will make atonement for us.
Alms make atonement. There's a verse in Proverbs, I think, that they use.
Yeah, but in court, yes, biblically, yes, but in the correlation of we need a priest, right? Yeah. Okay. So instead of talking about, oh, we're suffering the prophecy about the Levites turning on the covenant and being dispersed and the house that they worshiped in to Yahweh being destroyed, as was prophesied, they don't teach that in Judaism. Yeah. They just teach, oh, well, we can get around it. Even though we don't have it, we can get around it by just doing alms. Yeah. Yes, the Bible does say alms and loving one another through charity can produce atonements, because the angelic priesthood in heaven is already seeing your heart of repentance and love towards your neighbor and honoring that in representation to you, because the temple in heaven has always been there. But Judaism doesn't ascribe to an angelic temple in heaven, of which Christ is now high priest over all those angelic priests, as Hebrews 1 teaches us. The Judaism doesn't believe all that, doesn't teach that, doesn't hold to that, right? Because they reject the angelic presence in heaven that ministers on your behalf. Many of them do. This is why Paul is having this argument with the Sadducees in his day, because they rejected the existence of angels and the resurrection. So like they had a completely skewed, unbiblical view in contradiction to the law and the prophets, in contradictions to the teachings of Christ. The Sadducees and the Pharisees had their own little weird denominational beliefs. And this is why there was constant friction with Christ and the apostles. So they don't accept the priesthood of Christ and the Melchizedek order. They don't accept the angels being their own priesthood. They're trying to pull from what they believe is Beta Israel from Ethiopia, from actual descending Levites, to make their own priesthood again when they try to rebuild a temple in Jerusalem. So they don't ascribe to any of that stuff. They're trying to make it happen on their own power.
I saw a question up above that wasn't in caps.
All right, you have to help.
Can you just let me scroll to it?
This one here?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, so Bruno's asking, are there verses that say if you go back to the land before your time, you'll have nothing but trouble? No.
Yeah, and I wanted to answer this because I wanted to be clear that we're not saying that any random Jew or any descendant, any Levite, cannot just go and legally purchase a plot of land in that area and go live there. Anyone is allowed to do that. Mm-hmm. So it's not that we're required to remain in the dispersion, but we're not to go and create the nation, God's nation of Israel there. We're not to go there and say we're building his kingdom there. That's the prophecy that is not being fulfilled, that Christian Zionism has been teaching people that is being fulfilled or has been fulfilled. So it's not so much that because there were Jews living there when the Zionists showed up. There were Jews.
I just gave the story of 170 AD. There were still Jews living in Jerusalem.
There were Arab Jews. They were called Mizrahi Jews. Go look it up. Yeah. And the Zionists showed up, and at first they were being welcomed, and they were purchasing land from these Mizrahi Jews. So some really bad stuff started happening to those Mizrahi Jews and their children at the hands of the Zionists. So yeah, there were already Jews living there. There probably were Levites there. There probably were people from some other tribes who may not have known they're from those tribes in the land. It's not just their presence in the land that is the problem. It's going into the land, proclaiming the name of Yahweh in that land, that you're representing him in that land, and then proceeding to do everything that violates his Torah for how you're supposed to treat people in the land. So it's more the fact that they're not living in covenant over there. Right. And yet they're claiming it as theirs and they're purchasing it. You're also not supposed to, the land's not supposed to be sold permanently. Like there's just so many Torah commands that are being completely trampled on by a nation who is taking the name of Israel and the name of Yahweh. So that's the problem.
Yeah, they're trying to establish their own priesthood again, like I just talked about, their own priesthood, which they're trying to manufacture, whereas Isaiah 66 talks about Yahweh specifically. after he returns, when the new heaven and earth are created,
Yeah.
that's when he reassembles the nations outside the New Jerusalem and chooses new Levites from amongst the mortal man. That's when all mankind will come on Sabbaths and new moons to bow down and worship him. And it's not before then. It's not with this man-made, manufactured political aggression through military power. So it's like it's through Christ's military power
Yes.
that routes the wicked out
Mhm.
of the land before he accomplishes these things. And right now, there's nothing but wicked in the land,
Yeah.
even from the people that claim to be of Yahweh.
Mhm.
They're not doing the covenant commandments of Yahweh. So it's not about just like, even in 2 Chronicles chapter 30, Hezekiah's great Passover, he invites people from what we would call Samaria, the scattered northern house of Israel, the northern territory. There were still people, even after they were scattered and taken over by the Assyrians, there were still people living in those lands. They show up for Hezekiah's Passover, right? But that land never again, ever again, until the second coming, would be considered the northern house.
Right.
And even at the northern house, it's not going to be considered the northern house. Even
Yeah.
even at the second coming, it's not going to be considered the northern house, because the two sticks will be made into one. There'll be peace between Judah and Ephraim, which is the prophecy in Isaiah, which you don't see today.
Yeah. No way.
So like this, there's a ton of prophecies and details about the actual gathering of the people on the day of the Lord at Christ's second coming, when the kingdom comes. And anything before then, they're just role playing. They're just LARPing. They're just trying to make it happen in their own power. So this is why they're going to constantly have problems.
Yeah.
And they're not doing it. And they're not even trying to be faithful to Yahweh.
No.
So yeah, they're going to constantly have problems.
They don't even understand the basic concept of the boundaries that Judah was actually given at the time of Joshua. It wasn't even the amount of land that they have now. It's all a complete rejection of the scriptures.
Yep. That's why we have to know our Bibles, guys. We have
Yeah.
to know our Bibles.
Yeah, because guess what? It's a command in the Torah not to move the ancient boundary stones. Like, so we're supposed to be respecting the boundaries of nations that have been established. Like even that in and of itself is a command. You're not allowed to just, unless God is giving you direct command through his angels, you're not allowed to just go into an area and just take it for yourself in the name of God. I'm not saying people haven't done that very thing for all of mankind's history, but specifically, in the name of God, that just profanes him. That just profanes his name.
All right. Flatus is asking about, how do we interpret Isaiah 58, 13 through 14 in regards to how to keep the Sabbath? So I'll put this here on screen for us to take a quick look at. So this is the two verses that he's asking about. It says, if you turn your foot from breaking the Sabbath, from doing as you please on my holy day, if you call the Sabbath a delight and the Lord's day and the Lord's holy day honorable, if you honor it by not going your own way or seeking your own pleasure or speaking idle words, then you will delight yourself in Yahweh, and he will make you ride on the heights of the land and feed you with the heritage of your father Jacob, for the mouth of Yahweh is spoken. So how do I interpret this in regards to how to keep the Sabbath? Well, I think this is just reaffirming the instructions from Exodus 31 and 35 and Exodus 20, that we are to make it a day of rest, that we're told not to buy or sell. We're not to make other people work for us. We're not to work for profit ourselves. We're not to do our own vocation, like Exodus 35, 4, 1 through 4 talks about. All that would be included in this general description of doing things that please you, doing your own way, going your own way, not honoring him on this day, seeking your own pleasure or speaking idle words, right? As opposed to actively trying to do things that honor Yahweh. This is what we've always talked about on Sabbath, is that we try to speak and act and engage in things that would honor Yahweh as much as possible. We do believe that the additional instructions in Jubilees is synonymous with the application of the Torah. So that would include, you're not going to work your job. You're not going to cause other people to work for you. You're not going to go on a trip, a work trip, which would be like, even though you may not be getting paid for your travel, you're traveling to someplace with the intention to work. So therefore that would be essentially profaning the Sabbath, because you're traveling for work in a sense. But otherwise, we just try to tell people to focus on your family, focus on Yahweh, spend some time in the scriptures. This is why we do Sabbath fellowship. This is why we're delighting ourselves in Yahweh. We're reading his word and delighting in his ways, contemplating, meditating upon his word, as we're told to in Psalms. And so this verse 14, though, is the promise fulfilled at the resurrection at the kingdom come. This is the heights of the land, the same heights mentioned in 2nd Baruch chapter 50, the heritage of Jacob that we feed on, just as we see in other parts of Isaiah, that this is our heritage, chapter 42 as well as chapter Isaiah 54:17. The heritage of our father Jacob is the coming kingdom of God, which is the heights on the land, which is where we get to inherit this place at the coming kingdom. And it is a place that is rewarded to those who keep the commandments of Yahweh. So that's where you get your eternal life. That's where you're rewarded with your inheritance in his house. So that would be my understanding of these verses in regards to how to honor the Sabbath. Anything you'd like to add on to that?
Oh, just the basic. This is not a blanket prohibition on anything that brings you joy and happiness on Shabbat. Like, this is not prescribing that we all basically need to just lay in our beds and blink for the whole day of Shabbat, lest we do something that is in our own pleasure. Like, no, that because in the same statement, he's also saying to call the Sabbath a delight, which means it's something we take pleasure in doing. We take pleasure in keeping the Sabbath. I don't know anyone who's started to keep the Sabbath and thinks, oh my gosh, this is such a terrible burden. Why did I start doing this to myself? Everybody that I've watched start to keep it realizes, oh my gosh, why did they tell me this was such a horrible burden? So we have to, be measured and balanced in how we read things and not look at this and think the same God who's telling us to call the Sabbath a delight, which means it's something we delight in, which means it brings us pleasure and joy.
It was made for man.
Is not also in the same statement saying you can't have any joy or pleasure on this. It's talking about doing your will on that day, really.
Yeah.
It's about doing your will. So most humans' will is to be making some kind of money, like especially our men,
or sex.
That as well.
Which is prohibited on the Sabbath.
Yes. So it's natural. That's why he has to tell us to take a day off. That's why he has to tell us to go and rest and put these things down, trust him to provide for us.
Yeah.
And put these things down for the day.
Yeah. What you're seeing us do is us trying to follow the example of Paul in the New Testament, the book of Acts, how he had honored the Sabbath. He went to the synagogues where the word of God was being read, studied, and meditated upon. And then he also went to those towns in different places in Asia Minor on the Sabbath, week after week, to evangelize people, to teach them the word of Yahweh. Whether they were in the synagogues or after the service was over, he would speak with them. So there's many examples of the Sabbath being used as a day of evangelism as well. So that would be doing the will of Yahweh, and not, you're not going to a baseball game. You're not, just sitting there binge watching football all day, and tuning out the world. Like, you're making it a proactive date with your Heavenly Father in which you are his servant. You're enjoying your time with him. It's a day of joy, fellowship, and feasting. So, yeah, it's a wonderful time. Bruno's asking question, when in the story is the second Exodus? When does it happen? Well,
spoiler alert.
Yeah. What is commonly, the term second Exodus has commonly become popular in a lot of Torah observant circles in the past 10 years. But unfortunately, it's an interpretation we disagree with, as far as claiming that physical nations are going to be withdrawn from their country and gathered back into the physical land of Israel before the second coming of Christ and before the resurrection of Christ. We feel the Jeremiah reference to another Exodus that happens that people speak of forever is the gathering of the saints on the day of resurrection, the day of the Lord, this day that Christ returns at the seventh trumpet, the day of 1 Thessalonians 4, the day of Revelation 11, the day of Matthew 24, 29 through 31, where the heavens are shaken and Christ is coming back as quick as lightning from the east or the west. This is the day of resurrection, where the souls entrusted in Sheol are raised to eternal life with new minds, new hearts, and new bodies. And so that's all the qualifiers for the quote unquote second Exodus. So the modern term that's being passed around a lot of Hebrew root circles about the second Exodus, before all those Day of the Lord qualifiers, they're just saying, oh, there's people going to be like traveling through the Atlantic Ocean, and God's going to split the ocean again and let people travel through in their RVs, and their Airstreams at the base. They're just going to, I guess, build a bridge over the area, the Marianas Trench, and they're just going to like travel over all the land at the bottom of the ocean. It's going to be a land bridge opened up for you. And it's going to be like the Exodus, where the Red Sea was parted, but this time it'll be the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean will be parted, and people from all over the world will get to travel to Jerusalem and just I guess, drive unfettered into the nation state of Israel today and find some place to hang out
Some wilderness, apparently.
and not be killed by the Saudis or the modern Israelis that are there, who will absolutely shoot you in the head, hit you with cruise missiles before you even get there if they see a 10 million people heading their way. But they're all, that's just one little passage from Jeremiah.
Yeah.
That modern Torah observant couples have taken this idea, and Torah observant communities have taken this idea and they add all this extra lore to it.
Yeah.
They add all kinds of lore to it. Like, oh my goodness, the angels are going to knock on your door and you're going to be selected for the second Exodus. And
Yeah.
like, we had a guy on our channel, unfortunately passed away, may he rest in peace, but we had a gentleman on our channel like 5 years ago to give his interpretation of this. This dude had his own novel made up about all these other details that were going to be happening.
Yeah.
And that
there's going to be little flames of fire for each group of people.
Yeah.
They're going to be led by the flame. And actually, Sean and I looked into this second Exodus thing 7-8 years ago when we started the channel. And because I stumbled across an interview with the guy who came up with this theory, and he was not even a follower of Yeshua. He was actually a secular Jew.
Shmuel Asher.
Shmuel
Asher. He wrote the book, Second Exodus.
He wrote a book called The Second Exodus
in the 1980s.
Yeah, and even the picture of the ocean splitting and like RVs and vans driving through, that comes from the cover of his book. And this guy was, I mean, he wasn't even an Orthodox Jew. He was like vegan. He was of the belief that the Yahweh of the Old Testament was actually Satan because he commanded people to eat meat, and this guy was a vegan. So the whole phrase and theory of a second Exodus, quote unquote, doesn't even come from an actual believer. And it really it made its rounds in a lot of Hebrew root circles. So, and everyone who taught it, Sean and I were always asking them like, okay, so at what point does the resurrection happen in your theories? And none of them would ever answer that definitive question. Okay, so we're going to get all over there and we're in the wilderness and there's going to be this. There was one teacher who was teaching there's a whole nother wedding covenant and ceremony that happens in the wilderness before Yeshua returns. None of them actually addressed, and then the resurrection happens and Jesus, like, no one actually played the tape all the way through for us. So having said that, I haven't seen a whole lot of that teaching going around lately. I think a lot of the guys who were teaching it haven't been talking about it much or haven't been teaching much. And
there's
and strangely enough,
no one else.
Sean and I are rarely having to deal with. For a couple of years, it was a constant topic that we were having a battle and like correct people on. We're like, no, guys, and it really.
Some of the main proponents, look, I know some of the main proponents of it. May God bless them. I have respect for them. I just disagree highly on their interpretation of this. I think that it's a very interpretive concept that's not supported by Scripture. It just requires all types of eisegetical conflations of, this must parallel this and this must parallel that.
Yeah.
And I've personally reached out to some of these people to ask them if they would like to have a discussion about this topic on my channel, knowing that we disagree on it. But you offer your opinion on how you came to your conclusion. I'll offer mine on why I believe it's just talking about the day of the Lord and the resurrection of Christ, or the resurrection of the saints on the day that Christ returns. And they've rejected those conversations. They don't want to have those conversations. That's why the gentleman that I had on my channel that did want to talk about it 5 years ago, he doesn't have a following.
Yeah.
He doesn't make videos about it. People don't listen to him. He passed away, again, may he rest in peace, but he believed he was going to take part in the second resurrection before he died. But he died.
Second Exodus, you mean?
Yeah, the second Exodus, excuse me. Before he died, but he did die, right? So again, some of the major proponents of this particular theory, they won't sit down and talk with me. It's one of those deals where like, oh, Sean's such a big meanie because he wants to ask you questions about why you believe what you believe, and just give you a chance to defend your claims. And by the way, if we're grown men that can have a discussion about the Bible, you should be able to defend your claims if you're teaching something about the Bible and take on challengers, not because I'm trying to be vindictive or mean, but I'm trying to say, look, for the fellowship of the edification of the body of believers that we're both talking to, you're teaching something wholly different from what I see the Scriptures saying with abundance. and we have a crossover audiences. Let's get together in love and peace, and let's talk this out, right? If I'm wrong, if I've missed something greatly, you can show it to me, right? And vice versa. Like, that's all I ever offer any of these people.
That's suddenly not teachers. I'm not anybody's teacher. I'm not teaching. I'm just sharing my thoughts on YouTube to a huge audience that treats me as a teacher. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting, watching how easy it is to influence whole populations of people into having certain specific beliefs. And then when you just slowly stop talking about it, how that belief slowly stops being believed in. Like,
it was being touted when we first started our channel, baby. It was being touted and talked about so much. People were referring to it in the same way that mainstream Christianity speaks about the rapture.
Yeah. Yes.
It was a constant thing.
It was like our Hebrew roots version of the rapture.
It was about to happen soon.
Yes.
It was constantly being talked about.
Passover, you needed to actually have your shoes on and your staff at the door because that angel was going to be knocking. And this year is the year. Yeah. And I never hear about it anymore.
VV Life is asking about Jeremiah 33:18. Speaking of the Son as high priest in the heavens. All right. So I'll put this on screen for us to look at real quick. So to my understanding, VV Life, this is in correlation with the verses right before it, where it's the days are coming, declares Yahweh. I'll fulfill the gracious promises spoken to the house of Israel and the house of Judah in those days. And at that time, I will cause to sprout for David a righteous branch who will administer justice and righteousness in the land. At that time, when Christ actually comes back and administers righteousness and justice in the land, in those days, Judah will be saved. Jerusalem will dwell securely. These are all qualifiers for you to understand this passage. Okay. And this is the authority by which it will be called the Lord Yahweh our righteousness. Jerusalem will actually be called Yahweh our righteousness as a pseudonym for the city, and another epithet for the city, if you will. Kind of like you called New York City the Big Apple.
Yeah.
Jerusalem at the second coming of Christ, Jerusalem, which will be the New Jerusalem, will be referred to as Yahweh our righteousness. Verse 17, for this is what Yahweh says, David will never lack a man to sit on the throne of the house of Israel, nor will a priest who are Levites ever fail to have a man before me to offer burnt offerings, grain offerings, and present sacrifices. This is the qualifiers for this. So then the next verse in 19 is the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah. This is a different message. Okay. So this message is here altogether from 14 to 18 is the bulk and the totality of this message, and has time qualifiers in those days and at that time. When? The days are coming. When? In those days and at that time. Not when Christ dies and resurrects to heaven to become our high priest, but when he returns on the earth to administer justice and righteousness over the nations as king over Israel, where Jerusalem will dwell safely and Judah is saved. Two more qualifiers that are not present in the last 2,000 years. So during that time, at the coming of the kingdom of God, the second coming of Christ, that's when Christ will sit on the throne of David forever, and they choose new Levites to minister to the people. This is also what we talked about earlier from Isaiah 66. Yahweh chooses new Levites at that time. So hopefully that's helpful to you as far as understanding the context of that passage. Okay, Seeing Lenny is asking, will there be a time when the shock of how different scripture actually reads compared to what is being taught in modern churches wears off 2 or 3 years and still blown away by the differences?
Deuteronomy 30 awakening. For people to remember, it means we had to forget. So yeah, and I don't know that it's one single moment in history, because look at us. It's happening over time. It's already happening, sister. You're watching it happen. And it's just a matter of who it's happening to at any given moment.
Yeah, I think she may be talking about her personal shock of like what she reads in the Bible versus what the churches are teaching. There's their differences.
I've totally read that the wrong way.
Yeah.
I was picturing the shock of the Christians realizing how different things are. Look, I would tell you, yes, there's a time, and I think it's part of our maturing process, and it's what's been happening to me, and it's the direct reason as to why I have been trying to encourage people to pull back quite a bit and have some restraint in how we talk about the churches and all that. Because God, if you ask him to, God, brings you to a place where you have peace with all this, where you're not looking at everyone in the churches and feeling terrified because you think, oh my God, they're all following a false God. They're all going to lake of fire. Oh, they're all doomed. Like that whole, I think it's not just shock. I think we feel a sense of panic and we feel a sense of hopelessness when we look at our friends and family in the churches and think, oh my gosh, they're all just totally in darkness and doomed. God really has brought me to a place of showing me that there's always a remnant of his people, and they aren't always people who are doing the exact checklist that we're doing now, because over the last 2,000 years, there has been a forgetting that he prophesied would happen. So, but he has maintained his faith and his people throughout all the good and bad. There has always been true believers on this earth, no matter how bad the church got, no matter how bad the Protestants get. There is always a remnant of his people that have his spirit in them, and they may not have the best understanding of doctrine at any given time. So I feel a sense of peace when I realized, oh my gosh, the Torah crowd is literally no different than the churches in terms of all of our heart problems, and all of our attitude issues and all of our sin issues. And that actually brought me so much peace to realize, oh my gosh, okay, nobody's getting it completely right. And I can trust that the Lord has, for all my friends who I look at them and I see real faith in them, I see real fruits of the Spirit, and they just don't have the same understanding of scripture I have in terms of the commandments